So I wanted to make a video about something that's maybe a little bit different from my usual topics, but people seem to like when I do these kinds of videos. So I'm going to be talking today about what I have done in trying to cut away technology from its what I think is a harmful role in my life, specifically social media, and use it in a way that I think is profitable. So the considerations of all of this have come down to, well, realizations about myself and my own time, but have largely come from a study of ethics. That's been my recent topic of writing and lecturing and reading. And so as I think about what it means to live the good life, which is the real topic of ethics, I've come to the realization that when people think about ethics today, they tend to think of ethics only in terms of the big moral dilemmas or issues of sexuality. There are certain things that seem to take center stage and people are talking about ethics. But when I think you have a right understanding of the ethical, you start to recognize that ethics are really more concerned, not that they're not concerned with those things, but ethics is also deeply concerned with what you do in daily life. What are the patterns of your life? Because there aren't totally amoral activities. Really everything is ethical in some way. Every action that you take throughout the day, every choice that you make, everything that you do. And so it's important for us as human beings to orient our lives toward that which is good. And orienting your life toward that which is good is going to bring you fulfillment. It is going to lead you to a kind of happiness that we often are missing in our culture. And a lot of that is through technology. So as I've thought about these deeper ethical issues, and as I've begun to think about how ethics relate to everyday life, I started to think more deeply about patterns of life. And the patterns of daily life that we have in our world today are largely formed by our relationship with technology. And so I think the issue of technology and social media is maybe the most important or central ethical question today. And a lot of the other ethical issues that we're facing, in society are also really connected to the way that things spread or people act, behaviors that people have or that are repeated on social media, and effects that social media has on actual in-person communities, which seem to be lacking. So if you'd like to hear kind of my philosophical argument about why it is that I think that social media is largely immoral as a medium, not entirely, but largely. You can see the video, I'll link below on that. But I want to talk a little bit today about the steps that I have tried to take to just have a healthier relationship to technology in general. Now, I'm not all the way there, so I'm in process here, so I'm just going to share some of these thoughts with you. Well, having a healthy relationship with technology has been something that's pretty difficult for somebody who makes really their entire living online. So through videos, and I teach courses online and other things. So I can't have no relationship with technology, but I have to have some. Now, as I began to think through a lot of these ethical issues in my own life, just through the reading that I had been doing, I was simultaneously dealing with a pretty annoying health issue. And that was that I was dealing with constant vertigo, dizziness, and kind of like out-of-body feelings. And it was not pleasant, and it was making doing pretty much anything pretty difficult. And what I came to get diagnosed with vestibular migraines. And people often who have vestibular migraines have certain triggers that make these migraines start. And what I had found was that it was looking at screens. And so it became nearly impossible to look at a screen for any length of time. And when you work on screens, that is really hard. So what did I do? Well, then I started to dig into e-ink devices. These two things kind of coalesced. Maybe providentially, these two things kind of came together. It was these ethical discussions and these health issues. I just had to figure out something else to do. Something that society has done since we've developed more and more technologies, especially with the smartphone, is that we have decided seemingly as a species that convenience was really the most important thing for us. And if things are more convenient for us, then our lives are going to be better. We're going to be happier and more fulfilled. And then we'll have more time for the things that really matter. So part of convenience is that we started to merge all of our devices into one. We thought, well, if I can have all things at my fingertips, that's going to be really convenient. And so, if I don't need to bring my Game Boy like I did when I was a kid, or a calculator with me, and or a computer, I don't have to sit at a computer or even bring my laptop, because all of those things are just on my phone, and my smartphone just becomes my world then, and I can do everything on my smartphone. Well, what actually happens when you have your smartphone? You think it's a convenience, but in reality, it just becomes one big distraction. And so when a device does everything, it ends up actually doing nothing very well. And I don't just mean the technology does nothing very well. I mean, we do not do very well with any of it, because our focus is so divided. And so we end up, I do this all the time, where I pick up my phone, and I'm picking up my phone because I'm trying to, find, say, the date of somebody's date, and I'm writing a book, and I mentioned, I figured, whatever, like, I'm just, as an example. So you look up a random fact, and I'm like, what days did they live? I want to put this in parentheses here. And you look it up, and then you just end up clicking on a notification that you have on your phone, and you don't even remember what you were doing on your phone in the first place after about 10 minutes of doing just about nothing. And then you realize you've been distracted and haven't actually gotten anything done at all. We all deal with these constant distractions. And so the first thing that I really wanted to do when I started looking at buying these other devices to try to deal with what was really my health issue, but was also another issue of how I was spending my time, was to get single-use devices. And, if I am going to be writing, I want to write. I want to write and not be distracted and take twice as long to get something done just because I have a bunch of other applications up. And so I'll go through some of the devices that I personally purchased and that I am using regularly, and then some things that I recommend. The first thing that I realized with all of this was that I really wanted to change my relationship with my phone. It's just so easy to pull out your phone when you're sitting in silence. It's so easy to pull out your phone when you are there with your kids, and instead of paying attention to them, you're just distracted because of notifications that you're getting, and somebody's yelling at you on Twitter about something. And so the first thing I did when in rethinking all of this was I installed some kind of app blockers so that it limits your time on certain apps throughout the day to a certain amount of time. Now, the difficulty with a lot of these app blockers, if you've ever used one, is that those app blockers can pretty easily be turned off. Now, there are some that you can use that you can turn on certain settings on them, where they'll actually block basically your settings altogether on your phone so that you can't uninstall or stop the app. Well, that's kind of nice. The problem, of course, is that, well, then you can't get to your settings either, and there may be things you actually need to get to your settings for. So I tend to be disciplined enough that when I have my half hour time on whatever app, I just don't turn it off. So they're helpful for what they are. Though I will put on that kind of extreme blocking mode for a couple days if I really have to get writing done and I just really don't want to be distracted. So what I started doing was I started leaving my phone in my office and turning the volume up, and then just not taking it with me. And the idea was that I will start to treat my phone more as a home phone used to be, and I could just leave it somewhere, and if it rings, then I can go pick it up and get it. And I uninstalled Twitter and installed a bunch of apps on it. So I'm not using those, and I turned off notifications on a bunch of apps too. So even though I could look at them, I wasn't getting pop-ups constantly. But the other thing that I did was I purchased a Boox Palma. Some of you may have seen these. The Boox Palma is a device that is basically a phone, but without the ability to call anybody. So the phone without the phone part. But it's an e-ink screen. Now, the benefit of this that I find is that, and I just keep this in my pocket if my phone is not on me. And to some degree, it's still going to be a distraction, so you're not going to sit and be bored. But you're not going to be able to watch videos on there. I mean, I guess you technically can, but it doesn't look good. Well, what I do is I pull up my Palma. I have books on it, and it's e-ink, so it looks nice. So I'm going to sit and read in my spare time, or I guess I'll pull out my, kind of some language apps and practice my Latin or something. But that's about all that I use it for. So it means that, yeah, I'm still having those times of, sitting there and pulling out something to do, but it's not quite so meaningless. And I don't feel terrible after doing it, because if I sit and read something for a half hour, without really having planned on doing so, I don't feel bad afterwards in the way that I do if I pull up some kind of Instagram reels or whatever. I found that to be pretty helpful. I really like the Palma. What I really want to do is do an e-ink phone. However, the e-ink phones that do exist all have some issues with them. The Medita Compact is the one I'm looking at now, but the screen is kind of terrible. The the minimal phone is pretty bad. The Bigme Highbreak Pro is the one that seems to make the most sense, but I am just worried about the software and the fragility of the device. And so this is a problem with a lot of these e-ink devices, is if they have glass instead of the Mobius, which is the plastic screen, they're probably going to break at some point, and I don't want to spend a bunch of money on something that's going to break. So I'm not quite sure what I want to do there, but I'm going to do something. We'll see. But any recommendations if you have them, or if you've tried something like this, let me know. For me, though, whatever device I have, I kind of don't care what it does as long as I can call people on it, and I can use the GPS because I have a terrible sense of direction, and and if I can read on it. So I really do want e-ink, especially because of the issues with my eyes. Second device that I have gotten, and yes, I spent a lot of money on these devices, and they're not cheap devices, but it's worth the money if it is really going to make your life improve significantly. At the point that I couldn't do my job because of these issues that I was having, I didn't have a choice, so I just did it. The second device here, this is the Viwoods AI Paper. I will say of all of the e-ink devices that I have purchased, this one is by far my favorite. I love this device. This thing it's a place where I can take notes, and I also have PDFs. So I have a bunch of books, academic PDFs that I have on here. It doesn't have any front lighting, so it's or backlight, but e-ink doesn't have backlights. So you got to have decent light in the room. I have a clip-on light that I use on this thing, but I read PDFs on here and underline and take notes on them. I make notes on all of my podcasts and videos and things that I'm going to do. So I've switched from doing a lot of that through typing to just writing and doing it on here. It feels really nice to do it as well. And there's something about the way your brain kind of connects with things when you're actually writing it out instead of just typing, or at least I find that. So not cheap. Really, really recommend this. I love this thing. I use it all the time. So this has been my go-to companion. I take it in my bag everywhere I go, so that I'm not, again, when I'm taking notes or writing things down or doing some research or doing whatever, I'm not distracted by a million other things on my computer, because it's just this. I just have something to write on. And it's better than a paper notepad because I can't take all of my paper notebooks with me everywhere, but this I have with me, and I can reference things, and I can sync it with my Google Calendar and all sorts of things as well. So it has some of those conveniences that are useful, that help me be more productive, but it does that without being totally distracting. Now, the next device that I purchased is one that I bought because I wanted something to write on. And what I really wanted was a dedicated writing device, something I could type on that was not going to be my laptop, for two reasons. One is I didn't want the distractions of my laptop. I just want a word processor, so I'm not distracted by everything else. Second is, again, I am really unable to look at my computer screen for very long because of these issues that I have with my eyes. So I needed something that was an e-ink screen. Now, I looked into monitors. They are so expensive. This device was expensive as well, but it wasn't as expensive as the monitors, and it was portable. So the next device that I got is the Bigme 1051C. Now, this device is one that I bought even though there were a lot of complaints about the software that Bigme uses. And the reason I bought it anyway, and I'm glad I bought it anyway, is because the complaints that people have about the Bigme devices in particular is really not so much their hardware, but it's the software. And so this is a note-taking device. It is a color e-ink device. Which is nice because you can take notes in different colors and highlight in different colors. Now, people have some issues with the note-taking software itself. It's not quite as streamlined as books or some of these other companies that have been doing this stuff. But that's not really why I bought this. I take all of my notes on my Viwoods, and I'm very happy with that. I don't need another device to do that with. What I really did want was, again, a dedicated typing device. What's nice about this is that it has a keyboard case, so I can take it with me. The keyboard case is pretty nice. It feels pretty nice. It's small, so because it's a smaller device, like a 10-inch device, the keyboard took me a little while to kind of get used to where everything was. But once I got used to it, I typed just as quickly as I do on anything else. I also often set it up with a nicer mechanical keyboard at my desk too, so I'm not always using that, but it's nice to have the portability. What I do like about using Android for typing is that just by its nature, Android doesn't have a bunch of windows up. And so I find myself getting far less distracted by everything else if I just have just this on my screen. There's nothing else on the screen, it's just Word. Now, Word on Android is frustrating as anything. I hate the lack of features on it. I don't know why there's like no decent word processor on Android, which is crazy. And I've tried all different ones and none of them are very good. So it's very simple. So I can't do a lot of complex editing on things, but I can at least do my basic writing on there. So I end up using that for many, many hours every week. And I prepare all my, PowerPoints and things like that I use on there as well because it has color. So that was the benefit of the color, was that if I wanted to use it for PowerPoints, I could do that on there as well. So in summary of all of these kind of things that I have bought and how I've used them, so I've just really been moving to now separate devices so that I have my kind of dedicated note taker and PDF reader, which is my Viwoods. I have then one dedicated device, which is really just for typing. And those two things take up a lot of time for me. And then I do have e-readers. So my Palma is my small e-reader that's just kind of around. So I just keep it with me so that if I have time where I'm just kind of sitting around, it's just there with me, so I read on it. If I have more dedicated time to sit and read on an e-reader, I have a Nook Glowlight 4 that I have been using, and I've been using this for years. I've been using Nook for years, but this one I'm getting very frustrated with because I don't know, with the last update, it seems like Nook is, like every book I sideload as an EPUB just disappears from the device constantly. So I'm about ready to go with Kobo in the future. So any recommendations would be helpful there for that as well. So then I want to ask the question, is it worth doing this? Like, is it worth all of the work to do all the things that I've just been talking about here? Because these things cost a lot of money. And so the question is, is it worth it? Or what changes have I seen with all of this? I will say the biggest change, the biggest positive improvement has really been deleting social media apps off of my phone. And just in general, getting rid of Twitter has been probably the best decision I have made in terms of just my mental health and wasting time of anything else that I've done. And so it's significantly improved my mood regularly. There's this thing when you're overly online that things seem to feel very important to you when everybody's talking about this or that online. And you got a bunch of crazy anons yelling at you on Twitter. But when you are not there and you're not on it, it all just feels so petty and pathetic and stupid. That's the reality. And it is petty and stupid, a lot of the stuff that goes on online, especially fights about things. And everything seems so serious and important, and you want to follow trends and know what's going on. And not to be in the know seems like a bad thing, but who cares if you're in the know? Who cares? It is totally irrelevant. It does not matter. If I'm less in the know because I'm not wasting time on social media, but I am able to learn more deeply from Aristotle's Nicomachean Ethics, which is text I've been reading a bit recently, that's more worthwhile. And that's going to benefit me as a human being in the long run much more than the other thing. I will say, though, the one thing that can be very frustrating about giving up social media like this, or not using your phone as much, and whatever way you want to do that. And I know it's not always as practical. There's not always like a real practical way to totally get rid of your phone, is that you do start getting really annoyed by everyone else having their phones out all the time, because you think, well, you long for a world of the 90s or something, when people didn't all have their phones out all the time, but you're going to be the only one that's not distracted by a phone in a lot of places that you go. And so you can't stop what other people do. And that gets a little frustrating sometimes. But nonetheless, I think it's worthwhile. So the biggest benefit has been that, just in terms of my kind of mental health without spending so much time on those social media platforms. The second major thing is I'm just not wasting as much time anymore. And I think you don't realize how much time you waste if you're just scrolling on random things throughout the day, because what you think may take you a little bit of time during the day is probably taking a lot more time. And if you start putting timers on things and seeing how much time you're actually spending on things, you're going to be very surprised. But it's not just the time that adds up. Here's kind of the major thing in terms of my own work that I found. And I tend to be very productive anyway. So I know that, but I've been far more productive now because of this. But what I find is that it's not so much the amount of time on those things throughout the day, it's the way that it breaks up the flow of everything else you're doing. So if I'm writing for a day and I check social media a few times, it's going to totally, mix up my flow of thought. And then I'm distracted by all sorts of other things. And then the things I just read kind of stick with me there. And then I can't get back into that kind of flow state, as they say, whatever you want to call it. So it's largely the distraction that's just breaking up things constantly. And so what I found is that I can do the same if I don't look at any social media distractions, right? I can get the same amount of work done in a full day of work, in a maybe 3/4 day of work, sometimes half day of work, honestly. And then I could just take the rest of that time to do something else. So if I want to have like relaxation time, if it's like too much to just work all the time, well, you find that you get so much more done if you just do it in a condensed, actual focused way. And then instead of feeling just overwhelmed because it's all spread out throughout the day, you're just like, okay, I got the things done that I need to get done, and now I have time to go do whatever I feel like doing. So that's been really nice. So are these devices worth it? I will say it depends on what you do. It depends on what your job is, what your needs are. For me, I don't regret purchasing any of those things, even though they cost a lot of money. For you, it really depends on your situation. So, I do recommend trying something else out with a phone. I know a lot of people are doing phone fasts for a little while. Just stop using their smartphone for a little while. I think it's a good idea. I do. I think it's a good idea to just experience life without it. Or even if you want to do that, say, certain hours of the day, you just don't have it. You put it away somewhere. One night a week, have everyone in your family put their phone away and not use it. That's a good idea too. I mean, whatever you want to do. If you want to do an intense fast, that's a good thing, but it's not going to stay with you long term. So you need to have a workable plan long term to make your life functional, but do so without that kind of strong tie to technology. But for the other devices, the Palma, it's not terribly expensive. You can also get a Palma 1 used if you want, which isn't that much different from a Palma 2, and you can get it for a pretty reasonable price. It's probably worth it if you do a lot of reading and you're really going to use it. It's worthwhile. The Viwoods, it's a bit of money, but it is something that anyone who's taking a lot of notes a lot of the time and does that for work, I think it is worthwhile for really anybody in that situation. I think it's worth the money. Like I said, it's my companion. I take it with me everywhere. So if you're going to really do that, if you're going to splurge on something, that's the one device I really recommend. A lot of people do recommend the Supernote devices. The Manta has been very popular, and it's a very similar kind of device. The Big Me, honestly, it's really not worth it if you're not in the very specific situation that I am in, wanting to type on an ink screen because my eyes hurt. It's totally been worth it for me, but it's probably not worthwhile to do much else. I do read color like comics on it too, just for the heck of it, and just because I can on there, and that's been nice too. But the price is probably not worth it for something like that. You can get things that are a better price that have color because it's pretty premium. Nonetheless, for someone like me, it's still been very much worthwhile. I hope you found this helpful somehow, and I'd love to hear your thoughts if you're kind of getting in on what is now seemingly a trend, because a lot of people are recognizing the negative effects of social media. If you've done certain things, let me know. I'd love to hear about what you've done, or if you want any kind of further, reviews of any of this stuff. It's not usually what I do, but since I've been using them, I totally would. If you'd like me to, or any other thoughts on this, let me know. Make sure you subscribe, and we'll see you in the next one. God bless.